trade executive orders the president's going to be signing this afternoon. The first order directs the Department of Commerce and the Office of the U.S. Trade Representative to examine every form of trade abuse and non-reciprocal practice that are currently contributing to the United States' large and persistent trade deficit, which was the largest of any major nation in 2016 at $500 billion. Within 90 days, the Department of Commerce and the U.S. Trade Representative will submit a comprehensive report to the President on the causes of our unduly large trade deficit. It's the first time in modern history that an American president has called for such an investigation, and our findings will allow us to make smarter decisions on behalf of the American people about our trade policy of our country going forward. That's why the AFL-CIO, the United Steelworkers International, the International Association of Machinists, and the Aerospace Workers International all came out today to applaud the order. The second executive order addresses the current lack of enforcement of one of our strongest tools in fighting unfair trade practices, countervailing duties. Countervailing duties were put in place to address the problem of other countries dumping undervalued goods into American markets, making it impossible for American businesses to compete with artificially low prices. This is especially a problem in countries whose governments subsidize exports into our country. So to discourage this practice, the U.S. Customs and Border Protection Agency has a mechanism for assessing these type of transactions and imposing financial penalties known as countervailing duties when it's determined that this kind of malicious dumping has occurred. Since 2001, the U.S. Customs and Border Protection Agency has not collected over $2.8 billion in these duties. If you think about it, we could do a lot by maximizing this enforcement power for our country. So we need to do a better job on behalf of the American worker. If a foreign company, often due to its being partly or entirely government-run or subsidized, is able to flood American markets with an artificially cheap steel, for example, they price American companies out of the system. Say you're the owner of a steel company in Ohio. You can't compete with some of these below market prices. So you have to find other ways to meet your bottom line, like closing a factory or laying off workers, or might entirely having to close down entirely. By not properly using this enforcement mechanism, we're costing Americans who work in so many industries, not just steel, but in agriculture, chemical, machinery, and other manufactured good in particular. President Trump was elected to do everything he can to support American workers and American manufacturers. Together, these two executive orders are a significant step in accomplishing the president's promise to end unfair trade practices once and for all. Also yesterday, we were pleased to see that Senators Manchin of West Virginia and Heitkamp announced their support for Judge Neil Gorsuch. And Senator Claire McCaskill conceded at a private event that among the list of potential nominees that the president released during a campaign, Judge Gorsuch was, according to her, quote, one of the better ones. We hope that her praise leads to additional support and her support. It's hard to find any reason except for obstructionism to see why fellow Democrats in her caucus have not been able to join them. As I said yesterday, Judge Gorsuch is highly regarded, having received a rating of well qualified from the American Bar Association, and has demonstrated an unparalleled and unprecedented level of transparency, including the release of over 75,000 pages of documents, fielding nearly 300 questions from Senate Democrats on the committee, and 70 pages of written answers about his personal records, and has demonstrated a mainstream judicial record, with nearly all of his decisions being joined by a Democrat-appointed judges. Without a clear justification, Senate Democrats have fudged the facts on recent history, tried to mislead the American people about their unprecedented obstructionism, essentially claiming a non-existent 60-vote standard. And as I've said before, should Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer get his way, this would be the first successful filibuster of a nominee to join the Supreme Court. This would make history in a very bad way. They've also forgotten their own words. I've cited previously this week the rhetoric of Senator Schumer, Democratic nominee Hillary Clinton, the regrets of invoking the filibuster by President Obama, then Senator Obama, and the words that many other Senate Democrats like Senator McCaskill on why blocking a vote for a judge, having gone through the process, has no precedent and is irresponsible. Let me cite one more argument that many Democrats have recently made. Current members of the Senate seem to also reject the notion of a Supreme Court operating with 8, not 9 justices. These include Senator Schumer, Dick Durbin, Bernie Sanders, Dianne Feinstein, Jeanine Shaheen, Richard Blumenthal, Amy Klobuchar, Ben Cardin, and Martin Heinrich. Each of these Senate Democrats and the rest of their fellow caucus members need not listen to me or the president, but their own words as recently as last year. The president told the American people in his weekly address that was launched earlier today why it is. And again, we call on Senate Democrats to end this unnecessary obstruction and confirm an eminently qualified jurist for the bench. Also last night, the Department of Justice filed an appeal in the Ninth Circuit to Hawaii's federal judge preliminary injunction against the president's lawful and necessary executive order dealing with protecting this country. Moving on to some of the events of today. This morning, the president met with former Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice. They had an opportunity to talk about regional threats, current foreign affairs hotspots, our attempt to defeat ISIS, and many more areas. It was a great meeting where they discussed many of the challenges facing our country, and the president sought the former Secretary of State and National Security Advisor's advice and opinions on a variety of subjects. He also signed House Joint Resolution 42, allowing states to drug test unemployment insurance claims, and H.R. 1362, naming a VA outpatient clinic in Pago Pago, American Samoa. Also this morning, the president joined Jay Timmons, president of the National Association of Manufacturers, and some of its member CEOs unveiled the association's annual Manufacturers Outlook Survey. An incredible 93% of manufacturers surveyed by the National Association of Manufacturers now have a positive outlook for the future. That's a 20-year record high that's more than 35 points higher than that same rating was last year. To quote from the survey itself, quote, "The rising confidence stems from the belief that the new administration in Washington, D.C. will bring much-needed regulatory relief as well as reforms to the tax code and a significant infrastructure package." The optimism is evident across the spectrum of indicators. The Dow Jones Industrial Average is up over 12% since Election Day. The National Association of Home Builders Confidence Index is at its highest level in 12 years. The Gallup Small Business Index shows that small business owners are the most optimistic they've been since 2007. It's not surprising that American industry is reacting in this way. The president has taken immediate steps to make it easier to do business in this country, and we just are at the beginning of this process. On top of these significant steps taken in the executive orders this morning, he's also withdrawn from the Trans-Pacific Partnership Trade Agreement, cleared the way for Keystone XL and Dakota Access Pipelines, began a much-needed government-wide reform of our regulatory and permitting processes, and signed legislation preventing the burdensome stream protection rule from causing further harm to America's coal industry. The president was glad to see this report add to the list of measurements reflecting the incredible optimism and positivity that his pro-growth policies have created. Back to this afternoon, the president will meet with the director of the National Institutes of Health before signing the aforementioned executive orders on trade at 3:30. And he will meet with director of the Office of Management and Budget, Mick Mulvaney. In cabinet news today, the Secretary of State, Rex Tillerson, is in Brussels attending the NATO foreign ministers meeting. There, he reaffirmed the Trump administration's steadfast commitment to NATO. Secretary Tillerson also stressed the need for all member countries to meet their defense spending commitments, as well as the need for NATO to take a larger role in the fight against terrorism and ISIS. The president looks forward to meeting with his NATO counterparts in Brussels this May to reaffirm the United States' commitment to NATO and to discuss ways to strengthen the alliance in order to cope with challenges in national and international security. This morning, the Office of the United States Trade Representative released the 2017 National Trade Estimate. The annual report, which is required by law, surveys the significant barriers faced by American exporters. Its findings reinforce the need for the president's America First trade agenda, which prioritizes the enforcement of the trade laws to protect American workers and job creators. The president looks forward to having Ambassador Lighthizer in place as the USTR so that he can begin his important work in earnest and fulfill the mission of this report. And Transportation Secretary Chow, who yesterday celebrated the 50th birthday of the Department of Transportation, today directed the Federal Highway Administration officials to award $10 million in emergency relief funds to help begin repairs on Atlanta's collapsed I-85 overpass. Releasing these funds will quickly help to ensure that the bridge is repaired safely and in a timely manner. The White House Office of Intergovernmental Affairs has already talked with the Georgia governor's team, and Secretary Chow has spoken with the governor. Looking forward, as promised today, we'll be releasing the U.S. OGE Form 378 financial reports as filed by commissioned officers here in the White House. Right after I'm done here, we're going to have a background briefing with senior White House compliance and ethics officers to walk you through how that process is going to go and the public release of that information, which will occur later this evening. We'll be sure to update you if there's anything further to add. This weekend, the President will be here in the White House holding meetings. We'll be sure to update you if there's anything further to add. And on Sunday, the White House will honor World Autism Awareness Day by lighting the White House in blue to join with autism awareness community. Further research into the causes and treatments for autism spectrum disorders is one of the President's priorities. As we light it blue on Sunday, the White House will be celebrating all of the individuals and families whose lives are impacted by autism. I would note that it's a really interesting story how this came to be. The head of Autism Speaks, an organization that has done tremendous work with this, Bob Wright, who's one of the co-founders, is a longtime friend of the President. His wife, Suzanne, was struggling with pancreatic cancer last year, and the President made a pledge to her, and he said, if I'm elected President in support of this cause that you care so deeply about, I will light the White House blue. So it is in Suzanne and Bob Wright's honor that this will occur for this great cause, and I hope Bob knows that Suzanne is looking down proudly to see that pledge has been fulfilled. With that, I'd be glad to take your questions. John Roberts.
Sean, a couple of questions, if I could, about Chairman Nunes's visit to the White House. Fox News has been told by intelligence officials that Chairman Nunes is aware of who did the unmasking of certain individuals in the transition and may be aware of who ordered the unmasking of those individuals. Is the White House aware of that information?
I don't know what he knows, in the sense that that's and again, I've tried to make it a comment not to get into the specifics of that report. I will not. I think it's not in our interest to talk about the process. What occurred between Chairman Nunes and coming here was both routine and proper. Chairman Nunes and Ranking Member Schiff, who I understand is expected here later today, both possess the appropriate credentials and clearances. We've invited Democrats here, and I've been told that material they will see will shed light on the investigation. I know a lot of folks want to talk about the process and not the surveillance and the underlying issue. The substance, the unmasking and leaks is what we should all be concerned about. It affects all Americans, our liberties, our freedom, our civil liberties. So let's talk about some of the substance, and I know that's not, but on March 2nd, day before the President's tweet, comments by a senior administration official, foreign policy expert Dr. Evelyn Farkas, together with previous reports that have been out, raised serious concerns on whether or not there was an organized and widespread effort by the Obama administration to use and leak highly sensitive intelligence information for political purposes. She admitted this on television by saying, I was urging my former colleagues, frankly speaking, the people on the Hill. I was telling people on the Hill, get as much information as you can, get as much intelligence as you can. I had a fear that they were essentially watching the Trump staff, and he was worried about the Trump administration. That's what's out there, and I know NBC News has just reported something very similar about information that was used by the Obama White House to spread this information and this politically sensitive information. Dr. Farkas's admissions alone are devastating. On March 4th, the President, as you all know, raised serious questions about surveillance practices by the Obama administration, including whether or not the President-elect or the transition team members were being improperly monitored for political purposes under the Obama administration. Later in March, in the ordinary course of their work, NSC, National Security Council staff discovered information that may support the questions raised by the President and Dr. Farkas's claim. These are serious issues. They raise serious concerns, and if true, the issues would be devastating. We're committed to working with the House and Senate committees, as we've said multiple times, to get to the bottom of what happened here, why it happened, and who was involved. For this reason, we're in the process of ensuring that the reports that the NSC staff discovered in the normal course of business are made available to those committees investigating to ensure that all of the facts come to light. And if everyone was treating the President of the administration fairly, you'd ask a series of much different questions about the substance than the materials. As we've said before, I mean, when you talk about Russia in particular, everyone who's been briefed on this subject, from Republican to Democrat to CIA, former Obama administrations, Clapper, Brennan, you name it, all of the people come back with the same conclusion. And I think that is important, that there's been no evidence of the President's campaign and Russian officials. In fact, as you've heard me state before, it was Hillary Clinton who was the architect of the last administration's failed reset policy. She told Russian state TV that it was designed to strengthen Russia. That was their goal, to strengthen Russia. She used her office to make concession after concession, selling off 1/5 of our country's uranium. Paid speeches, paid deals, getting personal calls from Vladimir Putin. I think if there's really want to talk about a Russian connection in the substance, that's where we should be looking. That, not there.
I wasn't expecting to tap quite such a deep well with that question.
It's Friday.
Intelligence officials also tell us that Chairman Nunes knew about the documents that he viewed at the White House back in January, but ended up looking at them at the NSC SCIF only because he could not get access to those same documents through some of the other intelligence agencies. Basically, it was a last resort to come here to the White House to view them. Do you know if that is the case?
I don't. But I do think that it tracks everything that's been, I saw a couple tweets the other day that I mentioned where people were saying that the NSA was trying to get documents. And from a narrative of what's been out there, and again, we've been trying to be very careful about this and try to be consistent about how we want this handled. But everything that he has said, when he came out initially and talked to the media, he made it very clear that he had been looking into this. He had stated this much earlier than the president ever had raised this issue about surveillance and the unmasking of individuals for areas that had nothing to do with Russia and nothing to do with substantive policy, intelligence or surveillance. So I think that as we continue to down this path, if you actually begin to focus really on the substance, I think we see more and more a very, very troubling and devastating path.
Just one more thing to clear up on process, if I could. We're also being told by intelligence officials that the two individuals who were identified yesterday, Ezra Cohen-Watnick and Michael Ellis, were not the source for the information for the intelligence chairman. They did play an ancillary role in terms of finding some extra evidence here at the White House and helping to sign him in so that he could view the intelligence.
Yeah.
Do you know if that's
again,
true?
John, I'm not. If I start commenting on every one of these stories, that's not our practice. Again, part of it is that if we confirm some things and not others, we're going to go down a very slippery slope. I can say that we've continued to say that this is, I think, the substance of this matter, and what continues to come to light in terms of Obama officials admitting, either off the record or frankly on the record, consistent with what Dr. Farkas says, that there was clearly an attempt to do something politically motivated with the intelligence out there. And the question is why? Who else did it? Was it ordered by whom? But I think more and more the substance that continues to come out on the record by individuals continues to point to exactly what the president was talking about that day on March 5th. Jonathan.
Sean, we heard from the president this morning saying that Mike Flynn should ask for immunity. We also know the president has longstanding views on what immunity means. Back in September, he said, if you are guilty of a crime, what do you need immunity for? So does the president think that Mike Flynn is guilty of a crime?
I think he believes that Mike Flynn should go testify. He thinks that he should go up there and do what he has to do to get the story out.
With or without immunity?
Well, that's up to him and his lawyer to decide. I'm not going to give Mike Flynn or anyone else legal advice from the podium, but I will tell you that the president's view is he should go up there, he should testify.
But the president gave legal advice from his Twitter account. He said Mike
I know,
Flynn
but the
should
interesting
ask for immunity.
right, and I understand.
He has said in the past that the only reason you ask for immunity is if you commit a
Right, but I think
crime.
that the underlying point that you're missing, Jonathan, respectfully, is that what he's asking is go testify. Go get it out there. Do what you have to do to get there and tell Congress and tell everyone exactly what we've been saying for a long time. So, again, I get your point, but I think that the interesting thing is if you actually stop for a second and realize what the president's doing, is that he's saying do whatever you have to do to go up, to make it clear what happened, take whatever precaution you want or however your legal counsel advises you. But again, I've heard in some legal circles that the president could have exerted legal authority with him and Sally Yates and others. It's quite the opposite. And again, I think that compared to the narrative that you hear from a lot of the folks in this room all the time is a little bit opposite. Here you have a president who is telling Mike Flynn and others to go up there, make sure, in fact, we talked about the other day with members of the administration that the president we've made volunteered. This doesn't look at an administration that's not doing everything it can to get to the bottom of this in the appropriate way. And I think that is an important distinction that has been lost on a lot of you, that every action that we have taken, we've got up here and we've talked about Russia and the lack of a connection. We've talked about the fact that every single person who's been briefed has come away saying none exists, Republican, Democrat, Obama appointee, etc. And yet at the end of the day, the narrative still comes at us. And now we're going to the point where we've actually encouraged people to go talk to the House and Senate Intelligence Committee and the appropriate investigators so that they can continue to get to the bottom of this and get it aside from us. I think that's quite the opposite of what you would normally think that somebody who was not trying to get to the bottom would do. Amen.
Thanks, Sean. One on taxes and one on trade, if I could. Back on February 9th, the president said that he would be presenting a phenomenal tax plan in the next 2 or 3 weeks. Tomorrow is April 1st. We haven't seen that tax plan. Can you tell us when the president's going to present his plan?
I think, as you noticed yesterday, Secretary Mnuchin and Gary Cohn and others on the team talked to the president about the process, and I think that we are working on engaging with key stakeholders. And when we feel it's appropriate, that the president has given the appropriate amount of feedback, we'll start to put out the appropriate, outline and process that we envision. But at this time, that discussion is ongoing. We recognize, as you know, we anticipated fully being engulfed in healthcare right now, and I think that we're accelerating that. The president's got his team working overtime. He's been giving them feedback as far as what he wants to see and how he wants to see it. But this is a big task. It's taken 30 years, and we're going to get to it.
White House going to write its own proposal here, or is this going to be like the healthcare debate where we thought we were going to see a proposal from the White House, but in the end, the president sort of signed on to Paul Ryan's plan?
Well, first I would dispute that we signed on to someone's plan. We worked with the House, as you know from the president's statements. We were very on board. I would suggest to you to say that we signed on to a plan. It was a work that both sides worked together on. We worked with the Senate as well. And I think this plan, I would assume that hopefully we would come up with a plan that we all agree on. The president will put out principles, I'm sure, as we've already done in terms of what his goals are and how he wants to drive this as the process moves forward. But I'm sure that we're going to have a robust debate about aspects of that plan, certain provisions and certain other tax pieces, but we're going to work with the House and the Senate on it.
And on trade, the president during the campaign, he's now gearing up for this meeting with the Chinese president at Mar-a-Lago. During the campaign, he suggested that on day one he would declare China a currency manipulator. He hasn't done that. Why hasn't the president followed through on that campaign promise?
I think we need to have that meeting with President Xi. I'm sure that there'll be a lot of discussions about our economic relationship, and so we are days away from that. And let's see what those. I just don't want to prejudge. We're days away from it, and I know there's a lot of issues that need to come up, and I don't want to get in front of it. Olivier.
Thanks, Sean. Two, if I may, one on China and one on the Middle East. Does the administration plan to order a review into China's status as a non-market economy?
At this time, the two trade executive orders that focus on the countervailing duties and are where we're going to look. I think we've got a lot. Obviously, that's an issue that we would probably hope to have the U.S. Trade Representative confirmed, but that's a combined decision. I think that in consultation with both the Department of Commerce and the Department of Treasury. But let's see how we go first.
And then, can you clear up where the president stands on whether Bashar Assad is the legitimate president of Syria?
Well, I think with respect to Assad, there is a political reality that we have to accept in terms of where we are right now. We lost a lot of opportunity the last administration with respect to Assad, and I think that our restatement that both UN Ambassador Haley gave yesterday and Secretary of State Tillerson reflects the reality that it is now up to the Syrian people. We had an opportunity, and we need to focus on now defeating ISIS. But the United States has profound priorities in Syria and Iraq, and we made it clear that counterterrorism, particularly the defeat of ISIS, is foremost among those priorities, and that's why our forces in the global coalition are partnering with local forces against ISIS in Iraq and Syria. But I think there is a bit of political reality with respect to where we are now versus where we were the last administration in terms of there being a potential. There is not the opposition that existed last time and the opportunities that existed last time.
So it sounds like you're saying whether or not he's legitimate, if you were to declare him illegitimate, there's nothing the United States could do about that. So there's no point.
I think there is a bit of reality that has to be addressed with respect to the opportunity and the options that we have now that we don't have or they had in the last administration, and there is a reality that just doesn't exist in the same way. John Christopher.
Thank you. Really, what is really the end game for Mr. Assad when the president speaks to his allies, his NATO partners? I mean, obviously, Assad is not going to retire somewhere in the south of France. Something's got to give. What is the thought there? What is the disposition, the conversation in terms of Assad, who is very close to Mr. Putin, who would like to have a warm water port in the Mediterranean?
I think we believe there's a need to de-escalate violence and to have a political process through which Syrians will decide their own political future, consistent with the principles that have been enshrined in UN Security Council Resolution 2254. But there's a bit of, as I mentioned just a second ago, there's a bit of reality on the ground in terms of what the options are. So, yeah.
During the presidential campaign, the president said he was with the state on North Carolina's law banning transgender people from using certain restrooms. The Democratic governor yesterday signed a deal to replace that law with a new measure that civil rights groups still say is discriminatory. Does the president support this law?
I have not asked the president. I would say consistent with what he said during the campaign cycle. He believes in states' rights. So.
It's an issue, but what is the president's personal view on bathroom matches for transgender people and the ways they should approach it?
Yeah, I think that the president's made it clear this issue came up when Caitlyn Jenner in particular came to Trump Tower, and he said he didn't really care. But I think it is a state and local issue, not one that he believes needs federal attention. Matt?
Given that it's Financial Disclosure Day,
Yeah.
Why will the White House not be
Sure what about a
releasing?
proclamation, right?
Why will the White House not be releasing the president's 2016 tax returns, given that conceivably those can't be under audit yet, while the audit has obviously been the reason for why you haven't released those past returns?
I mean, look, the president's been very clear about his tax returns and his position on that. The Office of Government Ethics requires every federal employee at a certain level to file these financial disclosure forms that anyone in America can go on to. It'll be the first time, I believe, and I don't want to get ahead of the background briefing and give away the good stuff, but I believe that this is the first time that they're on the White House website. We are making them more accessible and more available than in history.
So then why not make this step?
I think that's an
that
apples and
has been
oranges
done
because
before?
these are required by law. I mean, these lists, just for everyone who's not familiar with them, the financial disclosure forms that we file, I think it's called a 278, reveal every asset you own, every debt that you have, your spouse's income, your spouse's employment, holdings that you have, credit card debt, it is a fairly comprehensive undertaking of every asset that a person owns, every debt that they have, and I think that is a very clear understanding of the assets that people have, the value of those assets, both in terms of whether they're worth something or the liabilities that they're incurring. That is a very, very transparent way of being able to understand someone's, and so to equate the two is rather.
Sure, I just was using that as a jumping off point for the tax returns
Well,
question.
I'll jump
back. If the audit is not the reason for
I didn't say
returns,
but
because there can't be an audit of
right. But you also remember that taxes aren't due until the 15th of April.
So can we expect them?
I don't know
on the
that
15th
I'm not.
of April?
I don't know. We haven't really gotten into. I'm worried about getting my own done. But I'll no. But I think that again. I think that respectfully, you look at what we're doing, going frankly, and again, this will be discussed after this is done. But I think there is an element of going above and beyond what has been done in the past to make sure that people have access to this. There's a lot of people. I think one of the really interesting things that people are going to see today, and I think it's something that should be celebrated, is that the president has brought a lot of people into this administration, into this White House in particular, who have been very blessed and very successful by this country, and have given up a lot to come into government by setting aside a lot of assets. And I think it speaks volumes to the desire for a lot of these people to fulfill the president's vision and move the agenda forward, that they are willing to list all of their assets, undergo this public scrutiny, but also set aside a lot, because you'll see that people are often told they have to sell an asset or get rid of something to come serve in the government. And there's a lot of people that have done a lot to come into this administration to give back, that have been inspired by the president's victory and the president's agenda to move the country forward. Jim.
General Flynn's attorney said that his client has a story to tell. Is the White House concerned that General Flynn has damaging information about the president, his aides, his associates, about what occurred during the campaign with respect to Russia?
Nope.
Okay. The other thing I wanted to ask you to follow up on that is, you were just saying a few moments ago that some of this information that would be helpful to the committee, you were talking with Evelyn Farkas and so forth, that seems to be something that pertains to during the transition. But the president's tweets, time and again, talked about tapping my phones in October just prior to the election. Just found out Obama had my wires tapped in Trump Tower just before the victory. I want to get something clear about the time frame. Does the White House have any information, is it providing any information to these intelligence committees that would draw these members to the conclusion that there was some kind of surveillance going on before the election, as the president originally alleged?
So again, I don't want to specifically get in, but I think if we're splitting hairs about what day of the calendar it was, that's a pretty interesting development. I think that we have now come to a place where I think that we can.
The president's allegation.
I understand that, but if the allegation is, well, it was actually on the 1st of December or the 10th of December versus the 31st of October, I think that we're starting to split some serious hairs here. The idea that, and again, it's interesting that now we're arguing over the date, not the substance. And the substance is, why were people using government resources, violating civil liberties, potentially, looking into people's backgrounds to surveil them, to understand what they were doing and who they were, to unmask them, provide their names and stuff, and into sources, spread classified information, make it available to others, spread it to places that they weren't supposed to, use it. But hold on, but let me just, I'm sorry. I think that it is interesting because, again, I get your question, but if what we're really arguing is, did it happen on a Monday or a Tuesday, or did it happen on the 31st versus the 7th or the 8th, I think we've lost focus here. There is. Hold on, I'll answer. Just let me finish.
Surveillance and
I understand this,
now
but
the dates are changing.
No, they're not. I didn't say they were changing. Just to be clear, I'm just saying that it is ironic. It is fascinating to me that we are now arguing over the date, not the substance. I understand your point, and if we get down to that, we come out and you really want to get into what date, but I think it is really getting lost in this debate that American citizens who were not government employees at the time, who were not targets of stuff, potentially were surveilled, had their information unmasked, made it available, was politically spread, and all of this, and it should be very concerning to people that an administration, or people in an administration, people serving in government who are provided classified information, who are given clearance in the trust of the United States government, misused, mishandled, and potentially did some very, very bad things with classified information. That astonishes me that that is not the subject of this, that all of this is happening in our country, and yet the subject, and again, we talk about what door someone came in, what date it happened. There is a concern that people misused, mishandled, misdirected classified information, leaked it out, spread it out, violated civil liberties, and the potential that that happened should concern every single American.
To follow up on that, I think we are concerned about the substance just as much as the
I mean,
process. But the details matter, but I just want to make sure
Those
that I'm hearing you clearly, because it seems like you're going farther than what we've heard in previous briefings. It sounds like you are, just as the president is, alleging that the Obama administration conducted unlawful surveillance on the Trump campaign and Trump transition team.
What I am saying very clearly is that
You have evidence of that.
No. What I don't. I know that what has been provided to, as I said in the statement, I believe that what has been provided and will be provided to members of the both committees, I think should further their investigation. I think that the revelations of Evelyn Farkas, who played a senior role in the Obama administration, going on the record to talk about how they politically used classified information, is troubling. I believe that the reports that are coming out day by day, that NBC just reported, that John just detailed, what Fox has reported, day by day, more and more we are seeing that the substance of what we've been talking about continues to move exactly in the direction that the president spoke about in terms of surveillance that occurred. And that should be very troubling. That, frankly, it should be something that everyone looks at and says, what's going on here? Why did it happen? Who did it? And how are we going to get to the bottom of it? That's what concerns me. Steve Holland.
Well, can I go back to China for a second? The president yesterday said that the meeting next week with China will be a difficult one, and he referred to massive trade deficits. Now, what sort of tone is he hoping to set for this meeting?
Well, I think he's been very clear with
Why is it going to be so difficult?
why is what.
Why is it going to be so difficult, as he says?
Well, there's big issues. I don't think it's a surprise to anybody in terms of we've got both national security issues in terms of our political posture towards North Korea, the threat of a missile that extends further and further, the tests that they're using, their nuclear capability. Those should all be very concerning. And then on the trade front, we've got serious concerns with what they're doing, our trade practices with them, some of the things that were mentioned in the past. But I mean, there's a lot of areas that we need to be concerned about with trade. And I think, you know, that there's going to, this isn't a sit around and play patty cake kind of conversation. They're big issues. The president's been making it very clear for decades, frankly, of the challenges that we face. And I think he wants to have a very good and respectful and healthy relationship. But he also wants to make sure that he tackles the challenges and the problems that are facing American workers and American manufacturers and get to them. I'm going to go my first seat and then Glenn because he's patient. First Skype seat, Maurice Goodman from WWDB AM in Philly. So shout out to Hallie's old stations.
Will be in Philadelphia. It's Randall Jefferson. The question is, President Trump signed an executive order that intends to deny funding to cities that refuse to share immigration status information. Attorney General Sessions recently suggested that cities could not only lose future funds, but that the federal government may require them to pay back grants. Will there be a when will this take place? And will that money be reallocated to other departments like Department of Education or HBCUs?
Well, I'm not. I would say that the president finds it unacceptable that some localities and counties and potentially some states have prioritized a political agenda over the safety of their people by flattering our nation's immigration laws, becoming so-called sanctuary cities. The failure to follow federal law can have tragic consequences for all of our citizens and all of our country. It's particularly concerning in a place like Chicago and other cities like yours in Philadelphia, where there's been increased violence. Immigrants, both legal and illegal, are not safe when criminals who have committed egregious acts are free to roam the streets. And the Attorney General has issued a public notice reminding all states and local jurisdictions of their responsibilities to comply with federal laws. With respect to the budget piece, I think we've got an ongoing budget process, and we'll have to see how many states comply and where, if any, potential savings are there, and then how we reallocate them. But I think the president's budget, both his FY17 contingency budget for funding beyond this continuing resolution on April 28th, and then his FY18 budget that he's already submitted, we're going to reflect some key priorities, both in terms of homeland security and national defense. So we'll see where we would reallocate any of that money, but I think the priority is clear, is to get cities into compliance and to make sure that we understand there's not just a financial impact to this, but also a very clear security aspect to this. Glenn?
Two things, John. First, just to follow up on something you said before, you said that Hillary Clinton had personal contact with Vladimir Putin, and the suggestion was that wasn't necessarily appropriate. Can you just elaborate what you were?
No, I'm not saying that's the contact of it in itself is not appropriate. Is not.
As a private citizen or as a?
No. I think what I'm saying is that when you talk about connections to Russia, I think the only connection that anyone's made with President Trump is multiple years ago. He hosted a pageant there, and he owns condos around the world, and some of them were sold to some Russians, and I think he sold a house to one several years back. That's his connection. When you talk about the other side, you look at what the Obama administration's connections, where you have a Secretary of State that was selling a fifth of our country's uranium. You have a Clinton Foundation concern with some of the donations they got. You've got the former president, her husband, giving paid speeches, getting a personal call from Vladimir Putin. You've got a stated goal of their of that administration, of Secretary Clinton, to have a reset to, quote, strengthen Russia. So when you compare the two sides in terms of who's actually engaging with Russia, trying to strengthen them, trying to act with them, trying to interact with them. It is night and day between our actions and her actions, and yet no one questioned what she was doing or how she was handling it. And yet,
Her pattern of behavior is more suspicious than President Trump's.
I think that if you compare the two, it's definitely, when you talk about the stuff that went to their foundation, the concerns that existed around the sale of 1/5 of all the country's uranium, the paid speeches, the personal calls from Vladimir Putin, I think that when you want to look at a connection to Russia, there is a clear one there and much less of one that ever existed on this side. Trey.
Sean, I just wanted one, wait,
Hold on.
one other. So Sean, in terms of the Nunez chronology, just to clarify, when we're asking questions about process like dates and people, we're not attempting to ascertain the geography of the executive complex. We want to know who knew what when.
I understand that.
So my question is, so I will ask that directly, forget about the technical questions. Mr. Nunez was on the campus. You say we don't know who let him in the gate, so
Right.
apparently it is, and you described, I believe, this is a normal process, right? Tell me if it is normal the way that I'm describing it. Mr. Nunez, the head of an investigatory committee, is allowed to roam around the executive complex, we don't know who let him in, to speak to two deputy-level members of the National Security Council. He is then allowed to see information. He then obtains an appointment, from my understanding of the chronology, with the President of the United States to disgorge that information. He then goes public with that information. Then, 7 or so days later, you say it would be appropriate for everybody to come down here and look at it. Is that a normal process?
Well, I would take issue with a number of the aspects of your chronology. Number one, which you're forgetting, is that initially he is the one that publicly said, well before any of this came to light in terms of the president's March 5th tweet, that he was just looking into this whole matter. He, according to John Roberts, his own reporting, just said that neither of those individuals, as described in your paper's reporting, are accurate. So I would dispute several of the pieces of that. And then as far as him roaming around the White House.
Man, so
No,
you
I
don't
understand
know.
this, but you, again, you jump to a ton of conclusions about, and again, I love watching some of these shows where they jump to conclusions for all,
You've
hold
already
on.
several times prejudged the investigation as clearing the White House. You've said it twice at the podium today.
Right.
So we're
what
not
I'm saying is
prejudging.
because I'm focused on the substance of this, Glenn. I'm actually, right. And so where's any of the reporting been in your paper about Evelyn Faucus and her revelation that this is what they sought to do? Where has been the reporting in your paper that NBC News just recently covered that other officials? You seem to be really focused on who showed up where and what door they went in and how it happened. To answer your question, yes, it's appropriate for a member of Congress to contact someone who has contacted him according to some of these reports. I don't know the answer to that, but if you're asking me, is it appropriate for a member of Congress to come over here? As Chairman Nunez has said himself, he wasn't hiding or roaming. He was asked to come over here by an individual. He came over, which happens daily. He was asked to go somewhere. He went there. He is cleared. And nothing that is inappropriate, and exactly the opposite. What he did, what he saw, and who he met with was 100% proper.
Did the chief of staff, who is, in my understanding, an exceptionally attentive gatekeeper to who comes in and out of the Oval Office, did the chief of staff know that he was on the campus? Did he approve his?
So
clearing
remember,
for the
you're
waves?
okay, but you're playing cute there. You're doing two things. One is you're talking about the Oval Office, and the other one is the campus. Right? So, no, the chief of staff does not know every single person who's on the 18 acres at any given time. They are people who are appropriately either cleared or waved through the system or are escorted on in some way, shape, or form. No, we don't track every single person who's on the 18 acres. Do we know, generally speaking, who's in the Oval Office? Not all the time, because people can go in. But if there was a meeting, in that case, we all sat back here. He made the announcement, and again, you're leaving out a key part. He actually briefed the press before he told anyone. We all found out, you, me, everyone else, that he was coming down here after he held a press conference with your colleagues to say he was coming down here based on stuff that he'd found that didn't have to do with Russia, that a whistleblower source had given him. Now, the other reporting that I'm hearing today is actually that the sources that you describe in your paper are not accurate. And while I'm not going to comment on either, I think there is an assumption that everything and the chronology that we know over is accurate, which I don't believe from further reporting that it is. And I also believe that some of the comments that have come out publicly in terms of some of the Obama administration are conveniently left out of that discussion. I think that that is interesting, how no one seems to really cover the fact that in a senior Obama administration with high-level clearances talked about the spreading of classified information for political purposes, and no one seems to care.
But just to be clear, Mr. Priebus Mr. Kushner, Mr. Bannon did not have knowledge of his being on the campus having this interaction with national security staff?
I don't know. Again, you asked two questions and you melded them together. No one knew that he was coming to speak to the president. He announced that on television during a press conference. Sean, Tamara.
Yeah, my understanding is that Dr. Farkas left the administration in 2015. So
Okay.
why is what she said in 2017 relevant to something that allegedly happened in 2016?
The question I would have for you is exactly, why is it? What is she says in her things, I'm urging my colleagues, I'm urging it to get the Hill, but it's odd that the presumption seems to be, why is it interesting? Have you asked her?
No, you're the
No,
one
you
telling
haven't.
us to.
So
confirm it
she
right now.
but she's been on television talking about what she's done, and you seem to have made no.
I don't believe everything I see on TV.
Well, neither do I. But I also I would assume that as a reporter that actually is interested in this story, a senior Obama administration official that handled Russia, that. All Obama administration officials generally are.
There in 2016.
Thank you. I appreciate the timeline. But I'm well aware of when it was. But my point is you seem to be rushing to her defense. At some point, she went on television and talked about actions that she and her colleagues took to spread classified information. And instead of defending her, it might be worth asking her what she's talking about, who she spread it to, why she did it, was it appropriate, who cleared her to do it. Maybe those are questions that can ask instead of asking me to defend why a former Obama administration official is revealing stuff that should be extremely concerning. So I'm going to go back to Tamara.
One other question, which is, are you more concerned about that or Russian interference in the presidential election?
Well, I think that if I'm as an American citizen, I'm very concerned about the fact that people potentially were sharing information about other Americans for political purposes and using classified information to do so and leaking it. That should be concerning to everybody. I mean,
The Russian interference?
no, that's
in the
not what I
election?
said. Please stop trying to. It's not. No.
It's just like, which is worse?
No, and I guess I don't. I mean, the answer is I think if someone's interfering with our election, that's not good. I don't think that someone revealing and leaking classified information is good either. I'm not sure that you should have to choose. I think that you can have outrage and concern for both, and I don't think we should have to pick as an American whether or not which freedom we want to have undermined. I think we should expect both of them. And so the idea that we should have to choose whether or not we want someone to interfere with our election or protect our civil liberties isn't one that we should want or that we should have questioned. Alexis.
Can I just ask three basic kind of follow-up factual questions? You've used two phrases here today. One is politically sensitive information and the other is classified information when you're talking about what the president believes was released. Because you said yesterday that you yourself had not seen the information, and that's my understanding as of today, are those terms interchangeable or are they different in terms of what you know from the podium was released?
So there's actually a classification level. There is there's certain sensitive information on individuals. While not classified is considered stuff that the government protects. Then there's secret, there's top secret, and without getting into it, there's a lot higher. There are differences in classification levels. So while you may not reveal a piece of classified information, what they call PII information is sensitive information according to the government standards. So they are different. Each of them has a different classification level.
But is your understanding, you've been told that the material that the president is sharing with the committees includes classified information as well as politically sensitive information. That's your understanding?
Yes.
All right. Second question. You said Congressman Schiff is coming today?
That's I know that he has made contact and is trying to arrange a time.
And can you share with us who will be responsible for escorting him to the proper place, showing him the materials, walking him through it, letting him absorb it? Is he bringing staff? Can you just explain the
I don't
setup?
know the answer to that question. I know that they were arranging a time, etc. I think it's going to. A lot of it will detail who if he is requesting it. I don't know the nature of. I know that the request was made, and that's one that there's follow up with the staff at the staff level to determine all of those things.
The material that the president has wanted to share with the House and the Senate committees, has it already been shared with the FBI, or did the FBI already have the materials?
I don't know the answer to that. Some of it I don't know. It's NSC. NSC pulls materials from the various agencies. So where that all came from, and is it single source? Is it a combination of those? I don't know the answer to that.
Answer to that?
I can ask. Again, part of it is there's a question of whether or not we have the ability or the right to release it. And again, as much as I appreciate where it came from, I think, again, I go back to it's does it really matter? Does it matter if it came from the CIA or the NSA or another three-letter agency? Or is the issue, Alexis, whether or not, as I've said before, whether or not there is a concern about what that information is doing, who used it improperly, what possibly could have happened? I mean, that, again, it's where it came from.
Wasn't clear. What
Yeah.
I'm asking is, the executive branch, the FBI, has a separate investigation. I'm asking, the president believes he has evidence that is germane to that investigation, as broad as Director Comey has described. My only
No,
question.
well, first of all, just so we're clear, the FBI's investigation pertains specifically to, from what the director said in open testimony, to Russia. What the president's, this is not what I believe they are investigating. Or
Understood. I thought that the FBI was also had broadened the investigation beyond just simply Russia.
I don't know. You should. I'm not aware of that.
You could just find out.
No, but why? No, you can call the FBI. I don't. I'm not going to call the FBI and ask them what their investigation is, and then you'll write a story about how I called the
I'm
FBI.
asking you a separate question. Does the president believe that it is important for the FBI to have the information that he finds to be so egregiously offensive that classified and politically sensitive information was shared by the previous administration? I'm asking you a really simple
I don't. No,
question.
it's not. You think it's simple, but I think the reality is it depends. If the NSA, where it came from, who can share. You're acting as though it's a very, you're acting as though it's a very simple process. It depends on the level of classification, who it came from, whether they have the authority to share it. There's a lot of things that go into this, and I know that it sounds really easy. It's not, and I think that that I know that a lot of times that just because it can get leaked out doesn't mean it's being handled appropriately. And I think there is a desire to make sure that this is done correctly and within the proper guidance of who has the authority to see the right things, and that all of the procedures are followed. That doesn't mean we just get to willy-nilly pick stuff and send it around to whoever. There is a reason that certain information is handled the way it is, so that we protect the methods and processes that are in accordance with the intelligence community. John.
Thanks so much, Sean. This morning, the Republican chairman of the House Oversight and Government Reform Committee, Jason Chaffetz of Utah, took issue with the president's tweet. He said he does not believe that the Russian investigation that's being conducted by the FBI, by the Senate Intelligence Committee, by the House Intelligence Committee is a witch hunt. Why does the president believe it's a witch hunt? He also said, I get your answer to that. He also said that he doesn't think it's proper for the president to sort of tweet out or comment on ongoing investigations. Can you also touch on that as well?
Well, I think part of this sometimes comes down to who has access to what information and what they're looking at. So I don't know what he has seen or not seen or whether it's appropriate. But again, I think there's a whole the reason that we've asked the House and Senate Intelligence Committees to look into this is to make sure that we get to the bottom of it in an appropriate, proper manner.
And commenting on an ongoing investigation, is that proper by the president?
What ongoing?
Well, there's an investigation that's ongoing by the FBI right now.
Okay.
There's an ongoing investigation that's ongoing by the Senate Intelligence Committee.
Okay. And
should he be commenting on that?
Which comment are you referring to?
Called it a witch hunt.
Right, but I think that but those, as I just said to Alexis, I think there's a difference between the investigations that have been discussed about Russia that we've been very clear about, and a discussion about whether something, as Devin Nunes has said very publicly, the information that he had that with respect to surveillance during the 2016 election cycle had nothing to do with Russia. So there's this seeming assumption that what the president's talking about is very clear. That there is an ongoing pattern and more revelations that what we have seen is that something potentially was very, very bad was happening, and people were using classified information, not with respect to Russia, but to surveil people during that cycle. And I think that is a very different. There is no, as far as I know, we've asked the House and the Senate Intelligence Committees to look into this whole matter. There is no investigation that I'm aware of.
So you take issue with Jason Chaffetz?
I don't. I'll let him speak for himself. My point is, though, there is obviously, I believe Chairman Nunes and others who have looked into this and seen the information are probably in a much better position to discuss the situation at hand and understand what's happening. I'm going to go to Edward Marshall from WBBM in Chicago.
Actually, it's Derek Blakely at WPMTV in Chicago. Thank you. I have a question,
too.
and if at all possible, a follow-up as well. Chicago receives about $12 million a year in law enforcement assistance from the federal government. Would President Trump cut off those funds due to Chicago's sanctuary city status, even though it would greatly hamper the Chicago police in their fight against street violence, something the president has repeatedly said troubles him deeply?
Yeah, I think that it's interesting. You talk about street violence, and then would he cut off the funding for sanctuary cities? I think it would be interesting to want to send more money to a city that is allowing people to come into the country who are breaking the law, who in many cases are committing crimes, member of gangs, and so you can't be a sanctuary city and at the same time seem to pretend or express concern about law enforcement or ask for more money when probably a number of the funds that you're using in the first place are going to law enforcement to handle the situation that you've created for yourself. I think the president's belief on sanctuary cities is one shared by upwards of 80% of the American people, that we shouldn't be using American tax dollars to fund cities and counties and in some cases potentially states that are seeking to allow people who are not legally in this country, who potentially can do us harm, to get funding. And so I think there's no question, it's not a question of what he will do. His intention's been very clear from the beginning. I think it's vastly supported by the vast majority of the American people. But I think that to suggest that somehow they're not inextricably linked is a failure to fully appreciate the scenario.
Well, let me follow up quickly. Does that mean the president is more concerned with deporting illegal immigrants than he is with putting shooters and killers in jail?
No, because if a shooter or killer is here illegally and is in this country, then I think that, again, I think respectfully, you're delinking the two issues. If you have people who are in this country illegally that are part of a gang, that are part of, that are committing a threat to public safety or committing a crime, then funding that activity and allowing that to fester is in itself a problem. And so by not rooting that out in the first place is allowing the problem to continue and not exactly showing an attempt to solve it in the first place. Like,
let me ask you about the two executive orders that are about to be signed.
Yeah.
Peter Navarro said this morning that they have nothing to do with the China trip next week.
Right.
So is it just purely coincidence that it's happening now and the president is set to meet with his counterpart in China next week, or is this somewhat setting the table for what might come next week?
No, I think they are both broad-based. I mean, countervailing duties is not something that's targeted at any specific country. So I don't think that you could use that as some kind of indication of any one country. I think we're giving up $2.8 billion a year, and that's coming in all across, through our borders all across. So that one, and the other one specifically talks about every form of trade abuse and non-reciprocal practice that are currently contributing to our deficit. So, I mean, there's a lot of countries that contribute to that, and I think a lot of times the trade agreements that we've made in some cases haven't been looked at or revived in a very long time. And so for either one of them to be suggested aimed at any particular country would be a misread of either one.
You mentioned that the president has signaled his intention to withdraw from TPP,
Yeah.
Keystone, you've got these executive orders, a whole host of others. The second executive order that's coming today talks about the first one, a 90-day review.
Yeah.
The one that's still outstanding is NAFTA and what the president might do with that. So does that move the NAFTA timeline potentially back 90 days? Does he want to see this 90-day review first before getting to NAFTA?
I think the first thing he wants to do is get Robert Lighthizer confirmed as the next U.S. trade representative so that we can have someone at the helm of that agency to really shepherd the trade agenda and help put the priorities. I know that Peter and Secretary Ross were here yesterday, and Secretary Ross and Secretary Mnuchin and others have been very involved in the trade agenda, but we really need someone at the front of the ship to help us guide us through, and that review and others are part of that major. I don't.
You frequently tell us to take the president's tweets at face value, and they speak for themselves. So when the president says Mike Flynn should get immunity, is he suggesting to Congress that it grant immunity?
I think Mike Flynn and his legal counsel should do what's appropriate for Mike Flynn.
That is, they cannot obtain immunity. It must be granted.
Right,
by
and
Congress
again, to
or
your
by the
question,
FBI.
right.
The president recommending either to the FBI or to Congress that it grant immunity, because that's the only way it can happen.
I understand that, but again, he didn't say Congress should grant, and I think, right, and I think that his.
What does he mean by that?
What he means is that he supports Mike Flynn's attempts to go up to Congress and be very clear with everything that they ask and what they want.
Right, but he could have just said, testify. He said he should get immunity.
Right.
And I'm asking you because it's an important
It
thing.
is.
Every lawyer who works on this tells you it's extremely important to seek it and then obtain it. And there's only one way you can seek it, by it being granted, either by the FBI or by Congress. And for the President of the United States to even lightly indicate that he is in favor of that, it seems to me is a significant development. I'm trying to find out
Right.
that's what the President was trying to
I think
accomplish.
and I'm trying to answer the question, which is that I think that what the president, not that I think, I've talked to the president about this, I think what yes, and the president's very clear that he wants Mike Flynn to go and be completely open and transparent with the committee, and whatever it takes to do that, he is supportive of.
Even if he doesn't obtain immunity.
He wants him to, I mean, I don't, again, I want to be clear. He wants him to do what is necessary to go up there and talk to the committees of jurisdiction to get this matter behind us.
And since you've talked to the President about this, he was not trying to suggest to the FBI that or the Justice Department that it grant immunity to Mike
I think
Flynn.
he was asking, I'm not entirely sure the process, whether the Congress does it or DOJ or both in this case. But the point that, I get it, but the, right,
would be
I
different.
understand, right. But the bottom line
He's not
is,
instructing his Justice
no,
Department to
what
do
he is
this.
instructing is Mike Flynn to do everything he can to cooperate with the committees as he's asked to look into this. Zeke.
One more thing. You said Congressman Schiff's coming over here. The Senate
No,
Intelligence.
and let me just be clear, because I know, before you continue, I just want to be crystal clear. I know that he's communicated, our expectation is, I don't, well, there we go, thank you, see. I appreciate that. Okay, I just, I know, but sometimes you
Senate
got,
Intelligence Committee put out a statement yesterday that I just want to read to you a part of it.
Yeah.
The committee has asked the White House to direct the agencies that own the intelligence documents in question to immediately provide them directly to the committee. Does the White House have any problem with that or believe there is
I think
anything that
we're
would
looking
get in the
into
way?
that. I think obviously we would have hoped that, like Congressman Schiff, they'd come and seen these documents. I don't know. I know that the council's office is in contact with them with respect to that.
Any problem with this
I don't. I'm not
procedure?
major. Respectfully, I'm gonna. The council's office is working with them. I don't want to get in front of how they go back and forth and make a decision about that.
It's not an illegitimate request.
Schiff is asking the same thing, too.
Is this an illegitimate request? That's all I'm trying to figure out.
What I don't know. It's not a.
Themselves, meaning
I think
the
obviously
ones
the goal would
said,
be,
we don't know who
again,
owns it, all
I'm
that.
letting, the White House counsel's office sent that letter. They are the ones whom those individuals have been in contact with. Obviously, we'd like them to come see that information, which is what we think would help them further their review of this situation. So I understand that. But what I'm telling you is it's not my decision, Major. This is a discussion that is occurring between both of those committees and the White House counsel's office.
I'm just asking as the representative of the president because it is his decision.
I understand that, and as you're telling me it's happening in real time, the Schiff piece of it happening in real time, I don't know the answer because it's happening while we're here. So I don't have an answer for us on that. The White House counsel's office is in communication with the committee in particular and with Congressman Schiff's office about arranging how that would go down. I don't know what further discussions they've had since we've been out here. Zeke.
So 3 quick bits of follow-up. One, minutes ago you said that the U.S. is giving up $2.8 billion a year in countervailing duties.
Right.
Peter Navarro was up here last night and said that sum applied to a 16-year period. I was hoping you could just clarify the facts on that.
I'll ask Peter to.
I had it as a far smaller sum over a larger scale.
Right, I'll have to ask Peter to.
Secondly, following up on Alexis's question, you made some serious allegations about civil liberties and potentially mishandling of classified information. Why wouldn't the White House, if it believes that it has evidence of that, hand it over to the federal agency tasked with investigating crimes and
Again, I'm not. That's not because I think first of all, I don't know what we will or will not do going forward, and I don't want to prejudge that. What I do know is that the House and Senate Intelligence Agency committees are both the committees that the President had asked on that Sunday a few weeks ago to look into this. And I think that's who is conducting and who we've asked to look into it, and that's appropriate. And I'm not aware that anyone else asked us for that information.
One final one.
Yeah.
Earlier in the briefing, you said we don't track every person. I think this was my question. We don't track every person who's on the 18 acres.
No. He asked about whether or not the chief of staff knew everyone who was on the 18 acres. That's what he asked.
So, but when it comes to that, do you have any new information about how the chairman did get onto the campus? Who waived
As I
it in?
said the last few days, I'm not going to discuss.
Will you release the waives records?
Yeah, I think all of that's going to happen as soon as there'll be a discussion about a lot of that in the briefing that's going to talk about the financial disclosure forms and such as immediately as this concludes. part of that, yeah. So with that, thank you guys very much. We're going to get on to the next briefing. Thank you very much.
Welcome back from the Sean Spicer Live White House press briefing, carried here at Right Side Broadcasting. Hope you enjoyed it. This is the post show for the for the Sean Spicer White House press briefing. I am Steve Lookner here at Right Side Broadcasting Studios. We would love today to take your calls and hear your comments and hear your thoughts about the press briefing, the stuff that was asked about, the different topics that were asked about. We had some talk about the Nunes and Russia stuff, of course. What else? We had some talk about sanctuary cities. We had some questions about, there were some questions about the China premier's visit next week. A bunch of stuff was talked about. So would love to hear your thoughts. If you want to write in or call in, if you'd like to call in, give us a shout at 202-470-0049. If you'd like to write in, happy to read your comment on the air. Go to Twitter. I'm at Lookner, at Lookner on Twitter. You can direct message me there. Or you can email me at steve.lookner@rsbn.tv. I know we got a message before already a question that I wanted to read. And this question was from Vanessa B. Vanessa B. wrote in, "Hi, can you explain why there's obstruction to confirm Judge Gorsuch as Supreme Court Justice?" And just to summarize, there was a question about this today, at least one question about this, I believe, unless I'm misremembering things. But a story that I meant to mention on the pre-show was that two Democrats, Joe Manchin and Heidi Heitkamp, two Democratic senators have already said they're going to vote for Neil Gorsuch. If enough Democrats come over, then that will allow the Republicans to get Gorsuch confirmed without having to go nuclear, and going nuclear would basically be changing the rules in the Senate so that there could be no filibuster of Supreme Court nominees. So basically it's significant how many Democrats come over and support Neil Gorsuch or not, because depending on how many Democrats come over or not, the Republicans might have to take this action that changes the rules of how Supreme Court nominees are confirmed in the Senate. Anyways, your question, Vanessa, with that being said, is can you explain why there's obstruction to confirm Judge Gorsuch as Supreme Court Justice? So I think a fair amount of, there's two main reasons that I can think of why Democrats don't want to vote for Neil Gorsuch. One is that, remember, Merrick Garland was nominated by President Obama to the Supreme Court, I think in February of 2016. It was very early in 2016, January or February. And the Republicans would not and the Republican-controlled Senate would not confirm Merrick Garland. And they said, well, we got to let the next president be elected before we confirm him. Now, I will go on record as saying, personally, I did not like that. I felt that, President Obama had 11 months more to be in office. It sets this weird precedent. So now what happens if 13 months before the year 2020 election, what if 13 months before that, it's not the same situation, but what if there's a Republican president at some point, and then 13 months before the end of the Republican president's term, a Supreme Court justice nominee steps down, and then then the Senate, who's controlled by Democrats, won't confirm the Republican president's nominee because they're like, well, when it was 11 months left to go, the Senate didn't confirm President Obama's nominee, so what's the difference between 11 months and 13 months? And eventually, it just seems like, given that there were 11 months or 10 months or whatever left in President Obama's, nearly a year left in President Obama's term, it seemed like it set not the greatest precedent to say, well, we're going to wait till the next election. Now, you might disagree with me about that. I am concerned, and I'm not convinced. I feel like that kind of thing was not part of the thinking when the Constitution gave the Senate power to confirm Supreme Court justices. And so I'm very worried about the precedent that set. So anyways, this is a very long answer to your simple question. Your not simple question, but your simpler question, Vanessa. Democrats are upset about that Merrick Garland was not confirmed by Republican Senate when he was nominated by President Obama, and I think a lot of them feel pressure, both personally and from their constituency, to vote against Neil Gorsuch just as a way to get back at the or sort of express their dissatisfaction with what happened with Merrick Garland. So that's one reason there's opposition to Neil Gorsuch. And another reason is just, look, the politics is polarized now, especially in Congress. It's very polarized, and I think at a certain point going forward, whether we have a Republican president or a Democratic president, the other side, a lot of people are going to vote against that person's Supreme Court nominees. It's just going to happen. I would be surprised if, anytime soon we had a nominee that was like 95-5 confirmed in the Senate, unless one of the party in power has a 90 people in the Senate majority or something like that. So those two things, I think, the being upset about Merrick Garland and also the polarization in Congress, I think those are two big reasons why there's obstruction to confirm Judge Gorsuch in the Supreme Court, as Supreme Court Justice. But thank you for your question, Vanessa B. Let me just see if there are, there's an email we got. I got to get to that as well. Okay, let's take, all right, Jake, we're going to take Steve, but Jake, remind me if I don't get to this email, the one that was sent that we talked about right before the show came on. So we have Steve on the line. Steve, hello, thanks for calling. Where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Fort Dodge, Iowa.
Fort Dodge, Iowa.
The heartland, a lot of loyal Americans, a lot of Trump supporters out here, basically people that, are the total opposite of what Washington is. They basically just pay their taxes, go to work, raise their kids, do what you're taught to do as an American when you're a child, and you don't blame government for all your problems. You just go out and solve them yourself. And that's why Trump hit home here. I think we got tired of government in our lives, and we just want to live our life. We're not asking for a whole lot. So that was important. But my question today is, if charges were to be made against someone from the previous administration or in one of the agencies for a violation of that federal law, would that come from the Justice Department, the FBI, or what law enforcement agency would be the one who actually would indict?
So my understanding, Steve, and thank you for the perspective from Iowa, appreciate it. My understanding is that the FBI is basically an investigatory organization. So they investigate crimes, but they don't actually file charges. The Justice Department are the ones who are going to be filing the charges. Now, I'm sure that there would be, like, the FBI, when they do investigations, they go to the Justice Department and they say, like, here's what we found out, and the Justice Department looks at that and they say, okay, it looks like you found out enough for us to make an indictment. But if there was an indictment, while the investigation would be done by the FBI, the Justice Department would be the ones who would have to actually make the indictment.
So if the intel group had found what they believe is evidence, would they turn that over to the Justice Department, making it a recommendation? And since I know Sessions had to recuse himself in regard to the Russian issue, would he have to delegate to somebody else to actually formalize those charges?
So it sounds, I just want to be clear, Steve, is there like a specific case you have in mind, like of somebody being charged with something? Like, would this be a Republican or a Democrat who would be charged, or are you just asking about either? And is it about like the Russia stuff you're asking about?
Well, no, it would be more in regard to this surveillance, because we already know there's an illegal act performed. So some crime has been committed. We don't know anything in regard to Russia has been done is wrong.
Right.
No one has said that, regardless of the connection. So, in other words, if somebody in the previous administration or intel had violated the federal law on surveillance and unmasking, would Sessions' department be the one that would have to make the indictment, or would Jeff have to delegate that to someone in his department?
So, Steve,
because of his recusal.
Yes. So my understanding is what Jeff Sessions recused himself from was the investigation into Russian interference, any kind of collusion between President Trump's campaign and Russia, and any kind of, it might have been also Russian involvement. Well, actually, it would be Russian involvement in the election and collusion with President Trump's campaign and people associated with President Trump. That's my understanding of what he recused himself from. But to me, that would not mean he couldn't be involved in cases involving any kind of wrong surveillance that went on of Americans. It seems to me, it sounds like two different things. So, at least from what I understand, Jeff Sessions could be involved in making those charges and wouldn't have to recuse himself from that.
Oh, okay. Well, that answers my question. That was really very good. I appreciate it.
Okay, thank you for calling in, Steve. I really appreciate your call.
Great.
Have a good one. That was Steve from Iowa. And if you'd like to call in and talk to us, give a call, 202-470-0049. And also, again, you can also write in. We have that option as well. Direct message me on Twitter at Lookner, at Lookner, or email me at steve.lookner@rsbn.tv. Let me know what you're thinking about any of the events going on today, any of the events Sean Spicer was asked about or President Trump has to deal with as president. We'd like to know your thoughts, whatever your views are. All right, I'm going to get back to this email I was going to read before, and this was, oops, I had it here for a second. There it is. Oh, I screwed it up. Here it is. This is from Patsy Abshir in Wichita, Kansas. Patsy writes, "Hi, Steve. Great job today." Thank you, Patsy. The White House briefing began before I could call, so I am using email. I am calling for all Trump supporters to call their representatives and senators for unity. This is the time we need to be together. We have the White House, Senate, and House. Just what our Republican Party has wanted for the last 8 years. Now that they have this, they are so divided. I have never seen a time when members of my party are so selfish and full of dislike for the president. They side with those who do not ask for the best of America, but rather the destruction of President Trump. Needless to say, I am greatly disappointed. Keep up the good work, RSBN. From Patsy Abshir in Wichita, Kansas. Patsy, thank you so much for your email. Really appreciate it. Now, it's interesting, Patsy, what you're upset about, and you're wanting. So you want people to call their congressman and encourage them, I presume Republican congresspeople, and ask for unity. And this is a concern we've heard from other viewers as well. So Christine called in the pre-show, and she said she was very frustrated because, it was like you said, the Republicans, they've been waiting a long time to have this situation where we have a Republican president and there's Republicans in control of both houses of Congress. And, what Christine said and what you said is you want them to be unified and take advantage of this to be able to pass some legislation that Republicans want and think can best help the country. And there's not that much time to do this. I mean, at least, the next election's in November 2018. It's not that far away. And for all, you never know what's going to happen in the election. For all you know, the Republicans lose control of the House. So, it's important if Republicans want to make change. They have a big opportunity now, and a number of you are upset, like you, Patsy, that you feel there's not unity, and you feel that, I'm guessing you're upset, Patsy, by what happened with the health bill, where we had a high number of Republican defections, people who did not support the bill, both from the Freedom Caucus and the moderates, and you really want people to reach out and reach out to their Congress people. And I will say, if you do feel strongly about this, and you want your Congress people to, you say you want your Republican member of Congress or members of Congress to really stick with the president on legislation, then I think what Patsy's advice is good. Then you should call your congressperson, because they do listen to constituents, and let them know what you think. I think that's good advice in general. If you really want to make your voice heard, give them a call or send them an email and let them know what you think. So thank you, Patsy, for writing in. Much appreciated. This is the post show for the Sean Spicer press
We should
briefing.
also probably address real quick, I have this out in the open so everybody can hear me here.
Yes.
We do want to thank Paul Medley
Oh, yeah.
for his $150 donation that he made during the Spicer briefing.
Very generous. Thank you, Jake, for saying this. Thank you, Paul Medley. I thank Paul in the chat room, but I'll thank him again on the air. Paul was so nice to make that donation to us during the Sean Spicer press briefing. He did it that way. You can do it where there's the chat room next to the broadcast, and you can just click on the $sign. And while Paul's donation was very generous, and we welcome all amounts, obviously, you can even make a small donation. Any amount, we appreciate it because we only can stay on the air thanks to your support. Without your support, we would not be on the air. So your donations keep us on the air, keep us broadcasting, keep us being able to cover the news and give you an alternative to the mainstream media, and to go cover President Trump's rallies live and talk to the people in line there and hear from the Americans, their stories and their views who are actually at the Trump rallies, and show you all the speeches. So we enjoy doing this for you and bringing you this alternative. Hope you consider donating. Again, to donate, you click on the $sign in the chat room. You can do it that way. Or you can go to rsbn.tv/donate, rsbn.tv/donate. And if you do donate in the chat room during a show where we're on the air, we will thank you on the air. We're happy to do that. So thank you again, Paul. Appreciate it. If we're taking some of your calls and questions and your comments here on the post show, as we always do, every Sean Spicer briefing, we have a pre-show and a post show. And well, I shouldn't say every, because if for example, I'm traveling to a rally, we might not do it that day, but we try to do it for every briefing. And if you'd like to call in, 202-470-0049 is the number. Direct message me on Twitter if you'd like to write in at Lookner, at Lookner, or email me at steve.lookner@rsbn.tv. We have a message here from Deplorable Ivan Romano. Thank you for writing in. Deplorable Ivan Romano says, reporters keep talking about interference with the elections, but aren't they themselves guilty of that? 1, they put out misleading or dirty polls. 2, they give debate questions to Hillary. 3, they put out slanderous lies about Donald Trump and his wife, and even were sued by Melania for the lies. I think you mean Melania, not Melanie. The reporters are guilty. So interesting point, Deplorable Ivan Romano. You're saying there are reporters out there who are so upset about the supposed interference with the election or attempted Russian interference in the election, and yet you feel that they try to sway the election in this dishonest way by publishing misleading stories, misleading polls, maybe having biased coverage. Interesting viewpoint, Deplorable Ivan Romano. So I appreciate you sharing that with us, with myself and our viewers. Appreciate it. Thanks for writing in. We have here, I'm just checking my email here, sorry. And I had written some notes about the briefing. I haven't even gotten them to it yet, so let me look at my notes about the briefing because there were a couple things I wanted to say. But please call or write in. It's Friday, we're hanging out, we'd love to hear from you. By the way, this is not political news, but the Atlanta traffic thing seems so crazy. So I-85 is a major freeway that goes right through Atlanta, and I know when we're in Auburn, Alabama. When we go to the airport, if you fly out of where we are, you tend to go to Atlanta and fly out of there because there's not like a big airport in Auburn. And very big freeway. We've taken it many times to cover rallies and stuff. And that freeway is now closed because as part of the freeway collapsed yesterday in a fire, and it just collapsed. The part of the freeway fell all the way down, and it's terrible. I can't imagine. And Atlanta traffic is supposedly incredibly bad anyway, but now you have this major freeway which is going to be closed. I've heard for months or maybe a year or something. And we were thinking, I was thinking here today, if we have to go cover a rally now and we'd normally take the 85, we can't actually take it all the way north, I think now. So now we have to go around and it's all crazy. So my condolences and sympathy to anyone located in that Atlanta area who has to deal with that. Let's see here. What did I want to mention? So an interesting comment. Sean Spicer said he was asked about General Flynn and what's going on with him possibly testifying to Congress. And Sean Spicer said the president believes that Mike Flynn should go testify and encourages him to go testify. So apparently the president doesn't feel like anything Sean Spicer says is going to be bad for the president, and actually that's how I read into that at least, and thinks that Mike Flynn should go testify. Something that was talked about a bunch here. Sean Spicer hit this point a number of times, that he said, people keep asking about where Devin Nunes got this information about the surveillance he got, and he went to the White House to get it, and who gave it to him, and all that stuff. And he repeatedly said this today. He said, what we should be worried about, according to what the administration thinks we should be worried about, is the surveillance itself that was of Americans, and not how this information got out there to Devin Nunes. This was said a number of times, and something Sean Spicer really wanted to emphasize in the briefing. Oh, also interesting, speaking of that, Adam Schiff, who's the ranking Democrat on the House Intelligence Committee, same committee that Devin Nunes is the chair of, Adam Schiff will visit the White House today to review the information on surveillance that Devin Nunes got a few days ago. Now, I believe, if I'm right, that Adam Schiff posted something saying something like today on Twitter, like, I'm not allowed to talk about this information because it's classified. So I wouldn't expect Adam Schiff to give a press briefing right after he goes to the White House and say, here's everything I'm going to tell you about everything I looked at, because I don't think he's allowed to do that, but he's going there today. So that was another piece of news we got from the press briefing. I'm just going to go back and check my Twitter feed here, my Twitter and my email, and make sure we're caught up before I go back to my notes. And I should repeat again, we are taking calls here today. We'd love to hear from you. What did you think about the questioning? I know a number of times in the past, for the last several press briefings, a number of you have been very upset with the tone of the questioning. Did you think it was better today? Was it the same? We didn't have any. Did we have any really big arguments or big exchanges between remember when Sean Spicer had that exchange with April Ryan and things got a little bit heated, I would say. I don't know if we had one of those that approached that today, but we'd like to hear what you thought about the briefing today. Our number here is 202-470-0049, or write into us on Twitter or email me. The information's up on your screen right now. I want to check my notes again, because I had a couple things I wanted to mention about the briefing. Let's see here. Oh, the White House will be lit blue on Sunday to mark World Autism Awareness Day. So now I'm glad I heard about this in the briefing, because I feel like if I hadn't heard about this in the briefing, and maybe I would have missed this and mentioned it in the press, then I would have seen the blue White House on Sunday and been like, what's going on? I bet that's going to happen. Some people aren't have gonna heard this, but that's not really great English. Some people won't have heard this by Sunday night, and they will see a blue White House, and for a brief moment they will have no idea what's going on. But that's why they're lighting up the White House blue on Sunday to mark World Autism Awareness Day. What else did we have from the briefing that I want to mention? Oh, Condoleezza Rice visited the White House this morning, I think. There was President Trump posted some pictures of him and Condoleezza Rice in the Oval Office. Condoleezza Rice in the Oval Office. And Sean Spicer said that the president and Condoleezza Rice talked about regional threats and attempts to defeat ISIS. Somebody asked about, this is another interesting thing that came out. Somebody asked about President Trump's taxes. And Sean Spicer, Jay, can I mention that certain topics, when they're asked about, they trigger you, you get very upset when you hear them keep asking about these topics, or do you not want me to mention it? So Jake is producing today, and Jake very often he does a great job producing the press briefings. But he's producing them, so he's listening to the press briefing. And once in a while, Jake, like a number of you, gets bothered when the same things get asked about over and over again. And today, when somebody asked about the taxes, President Trump's taxes, and also when somebody asked about Russia, Jake, I heard this audible groan, and Jake got very upset because he keeps hearing these questions in every briefing. So I can kind of tell when these questions are being asked about, because I hear Jake being upset about it. So that's what I wanted to say.
Drives me crazy.
See, even now he's getting angry and he says it drives him crazy. Anyways, though, somebody did ask about the tax returns, but Sean Spicer said he has not talked with the president about whether his taxes are done or able to release, and then he joked, "I'm worried about getting my own done." Although maybe that wasn't a joke, because maybe he really is worried about getting his own done. I'm sure he is if he hasn't done it yet. But also, there was this piece of information. Sean Spicer said the White House is posting financial disclosure forms on their website that include the president's assets, debt, spouse's income, and holdings. I checked the website for this, and they don't have the current ones up there yet. You can go see the Obama and Biden ones, but not the current ones yet. But supposedly they're going to be posted at some point soon. So that's a heads up. You can go, if you want to know where the link is, probably go to the whitehouse.gov site, or you can search Twitter for this, and somebody probably I know somebody posted the link, I just don't have it written down here. So there was that from the press briefing. A bunch of different little things talked about there in addition to the big things. What else do we got here? There were a couple other notes I wanted to mention from the press briefing. The surveillance I talked about. Oh, he talked a bit about the upcoming meeting with the Premier of China. And there was this tweet, I should mention that actually, that President Trump sent out about this yesterday that was quite an interesting tweet. Let me get it up here so I can read it to you if you didn't see it. So, yesterday, where is it here? Yes, President Trump sent out two tweets about his meeting with the Chinese premier next week. One was the meeting, the first one, they were in a row. The first one was the meeting next week. Actually, I'll just read them both at once because it's a ... They're meant to be read both at once. Here are the two tweets. The meeting next week with China will be a very difficult one in that we can no longer have massive trade deficits and job losses. American companies must be prepared to look at other alternatives. So he said, President Trump, it's interesting, he says the meeting is going to be a difficult one. So that's not something we always see a leader do in advance, say the meeting's going to be a difficult one. Maybe it's like early negotiating kind of thing. But Sean Spicer was asked about that today. And Sean Spicer said, where did I write it down here? So he was asked why President Trump thought the meeting would be difficult. And Sean Spicer said, there are big issues. He said it's not a sit around and play patty cake situation. So it sounds like there's going to be some big economic issues discussed between President Trump and the Chinese premier next week. I keep saying Chinese premier. I hope it's not Chinese president. I believe it's Chinese premier. But that should make, when the leaders come and they visit the White House, they have the press conference with both the leaders standing there. They did it with Angela Merkel and they did it with Theresa May. So I'm assuming there will be one with the Chinese premier too, but it'll be interesting to see what the body language is like, and if it is a difficult meeting, will they say it was difficult during the press conference? What will that be like? We will definitely cover that for you when it happens, but looking forward to hearing what that's like and what happens at that whole meeting in general. I need a drink of water right now. Okay, so this again. We are at the post show for the Sean Spicer press briefing. There won't be another press briefing until Monday. So we have to go without this weekend, at least as far as there won't be a regular press briefing. So, but I should point out, we got to get on. So Jake, I just remembered, in 17 minutes or so, President Trump is supposed to sign an executive order, 2 executive orders, but I don't know if that's being made available to us live. If it's not, I'm guessing we'll be able to get the video after. But Jake, if you can let me know if you can figure that out. Because if it's live, we'll go to it. But if not, we will wait until...
I'll see what I can do.
Okay, so Jake will get on top of that. So President Trump is supposed to sign a couple executive orders related to trade and unfair trade. So in trying to redress unfair trade. So that's happening. And that's happening this afternoon. So we will bring you some coverage of that when we are able to. Jake's on it right now finding out. But for now, this is the post show. We've been taking your calls all day. We really appreciate your calls. All day, I mean in the pre-show and now. We also appreciate all your comments. Excellent comments, excellent calls today. If you'd like to, before we finish today, call in and let us know what you're thinking about, politics-wise, about the briefing or about any of the other big issues going on. We'd love to hear from you. Give us a call at 202-470-0049. Or we will have the feed. So let me ask you this, Jake. So it's 3:15 now, 3:14 now, and it's supposed to start at 3:30, right? So are we going to do it on a different window or this same window? Right here. Okay, so what will happen is people will be watching this, and then we'll go straight to it when it comes up. Correct? Okay, so if you want to see, and oh, Jake, just since I'm here and I can't do it at once, could somebody out there, it'll probably end up being you, send a tweet out to people or Facebook just to let them know that this is the stream to go to for the President Trump signing the executive orders?
No.
Oh, Jake's not going to do it. No, he's kidding. He's going to do it. Thank you, Jake. So that's exciting. So we will bring you the live footage of President Trump signing the executive orders on trade coming up in 15 minutes or so. Right here, you don't have to go anywhere else. So looking forward to that. So, and that's another thing. You can write in or call in and let me know what you think about that. I'd love to hear it. American Tammy writes in with a comment. American Tammy says, those reporters haven't got a brain between them. I wish he wouldn't call on them. Not one pertinent question. So American Tammy, you will add your name to the list of our viewers who are not happy with the reporter's conduct during the Sean Spicer's press briefing, and you wish they would ask better questions, and you think Sean Spicer shouldn't even call on them anymore. Now, if he didn't call on them at all, he might get a lot of flack from that, obviously, but thank you for calling in and sharing your sentiments about that. We appreciate that. Oh, cool. So thanks, Tammy, for writing in. We have a call from Jason Thornton. Jason, always good to hear from you. How are you today?
Good to hear from you, Steve. By the way, that's a snappy ensemble you have on there.
Oh, thank you. You know, it's a little blue, little purple. So thanks. I'll give a shout out to Men's Warehouse for helping me clothe myself.
I have a personal question for you.
Yes.
Do you like Russian dressing on your carrots and cucumbers?
Oh, wow. It seems like a loaded question you're asking me, Jason. So I will say this. I don't put anything on my carrots and cucumbers, but Jake says he likes salt on his cucumbers. But I know people have different preferences about this. But I wouldn't...
Salt.
I wouldn't read into any of my political views based on my cucumber and carrot preferences. But I encourage everybody to eat cucumbers and carrots because they're healthy and good. So there.
Steve,
yes.
Do you think it would be a good thing to put shock collars on the reporters? That way, when they keep asking the same question, Sean Spicer can just hit the button.
You know, it would. I guess it would be good if you wanted to discourage them from asking certain questions and you didn't care about shocking human beings a lot. But you know, I will say, Jason, you know, and we're hearing it from our viewers. I do think there's an increased frustration among a lot of people out there about the questions they hear again and again, and you know, about the tax returns and the Nunes, and it's like, I guess there's also frustration because at a certain point you ask, and Sean Spicer's going to give you the answer he wants to give you, and by asking it the 10th time, are you going to get a different answer than the 9th time or the 8th time? So I can see some frustration.
As soon as they start with the Russia, you can zap them.
Yes.
But, at any rate, that's what I was trying to mention the other day in my email to you was they should swap out the reporters because they just keep asking the same stupid questions over and over again, and it seems everybody's just too familiar in there. If we had more voices in there, they possibly would ask other questions.
And let me reiterate, Jason, so people who don't know, so Jason, you had a suggestion that you originally made a couple days ago where you think if the reporters from the different news organizations were swapped out and rotated once in a while rather than the same people all the time, you think maybe that would lead to some variety in the questions, which you would like, correct?
Correct. I mean, I think the term today on the chat was the re-squawk squad.
The re-squawk squad. That's the term for the people, the press in.
Yeah, all they do is just, and then they keep re-asking. Oh, I'd like to re-ask the same question the other previous reporter asked. What good does that do?
Right. So it's I have sympathy because I know, again, I'm here and in the office. We watch them. We watch the briefings, and you hear a lot of the same questions. And I guess they think that they might get a different answer on a given day, but it can be.
I think they should have the RSBN chat scrolling past so that the reporters can see it.
The RSBN, the chat room, yes. So, your points are well taken, and I appreciate you calling and sharing that view. And it's definitely becoming a very common view among our viewership, and I understand it. So, I thank you for calling in, Jason, and I hope you have a great weekend. Yeah, I hope you have a great weekend as well, and hopefully we'll talk to you next week.
Thanks, sir.
That was Jason Thornton. Jason Thornton, who is frequently in the right side chat room. And if you maybe you don't know about the chat rooms, there are right side chat rooms both during our broadcasts on YouTube. You can always find a chat room either next to. You can find a chat room on YouTube next to the broadcast. If we're not broadcasting a show, you can go to the RSBN office cam, which shows our office. You can see me and Jake doing our work and eating carrots and cucumbers. But Jake doesn't eat carrots, so just cucumbers. And but there's the chat room is there when we're not showing programming. And also, there's always a chat on rsbn.tv, our website, where you can go to that chat room and if you look under the different events, one of the recent events will have the active chat going on. Those are great chats, and they're very, very, very well moderated. No trolls allowed. They kick the trolls out. There's always a bunch of moderators doing great work. We thank you to the moderators for always doing that great work in the chat rooms and making the chats a safe, fun place to be. And welcoming place to be. So feel free to check out the chat rooms if you haven't, the right side chat rooms. And if you go on the one on YouTube, you very well might see Jason there. Well, you'll probably see Jason there. I don't know if he'll be there today after his call, but you'll see him there at some point. And when you go to the chat room, tell him Steve sent you. No, don't say that. You can say it if you want, but I think they'll just be annoyed. Let's see here. So we are waiting. There's about 9 minutes now until President Trump is supposed to sign his executive orders. So, hey, Jake, I have a question for you. There's a little bit of a delay. So, Jake, are we coming back here after the executive order, or are we just or is the executive order gonna be the end of the stream? Okay, so we'll probably, thank you, Jake. So basically, after the executive order, we will come back here probably for about 10 minutes or so to wrap it up. So please stick around after the executive orders are signed, and President Trump says whatever he's going to say. But that's going to be coming up next. Stay right here. This is the place to watch. It's the post-show for the Sean Spicer press briefing and the pre-show for the Donald Trump executive order signing. Busy day here at Right Side with events going on in the White House. And also, if you haven't watched it, we posted a video earlier today of President Trump meeting with different business leaders, American small business leaders, the National, Association of Manufacturers. And if you haven't watched that, you can find that on our YouTube site. So check that out as well. For now, I think I got a message here, so I'm going to read it. We got an email from Mike Klonks. Mike writes in, greetings, I thought I would write rather than call. You are welcome to do so, Mike. So I would not hog the call-ins. Well, you can call as much as you want, Mike. Just not multiple times in the same show, but other than that, call as much as you want. Mike says, is anyone else sick and tired of Major Garrett's haughty face after and during his questioning? Steve, also, with regard to my phone call, Jason Chaffetz griping, decrying Trump's tweeting using term witch hunt. This is so obvious with regard to the Democrats' efforts to delegitimize the Trump presidency, more than blatant, and that Chaffetz decries this furthers my earlier point on how Republicans seem not to be able to stick together. With kind regards, Mike Klonks. Mike, thank you so much for the message. So, a couple things you're saying. One is you don't like Major Garrett's attitude during the press briefings, and you would appreciate him making an attitude adjustment. So thank you for setting in that point. And also you say you think Jason Chaffetz is not significantly on board. And now I've been reading a bunch of stuff this morning, but I didn't see Was there a thing this morning where like Chaffetz criticized Trump over the Freedom Caucus or something like that? Let me see if I can figure this out really fast. You know, I try my best to keep up on everything, but sometimes things slip through the cracks. Let's see. So I see there's a post, Jason Chaffetz to Trump, stop the witch hunt claims. So there's that. So there was some criticism going on by Trump of Jason Chaffetz of Trump. So you're saying, Mike, and we've gotten a number of you have commented on this in the last couple of days, and especially today. I think we've had 3 or 4 viewers write or call about this, that you're very concerned with what you perceive as a lack of unity on the Republican side, and you really want Republicans to unite and get behind Donald Trump, President Trump, because you want legislation to be passed to help America, and that you think that rightly, if you think this, that the only way Republicans can pass this is to be united. Now, I guess they could pass it with Democratic support if they're not united, but I think it'll be tough to get Democratic support for anything President Trump does. Maybe infrastructure, but I think it's going to be tough. So, thank you for writing that in. And again, a number of you want Republicans to be united. And Mike, you don't like Jason Chaffetz's criticism of President Trump because you feel that's just another way Republicans are not united. So thank you for writing in. We have about 4 minutes until...
Steve, we'd like to cut in real quick to make an announcement to everybody and let everyone know that Dan, I never know if I could pronounce this correctly, but Dan Canepa, who is an RSBN loyalist, I should say, he donated 50 euros, and his message is 50 euros equals 1,000 pesos, and 1,000 pesos will get you a bus from the border to Mexico City.
Wow.
So Steve, I think he's telling you that, I think he's saying you have to go back.
He's sending me back, is what you're saying. Is that what you're saying, Jake? He's telling me I need to go back?
I don't know. I'm just messing around. But
See, now people are going to think. I gave all my documents in. I always do that for my employee, being an employer, and give my passport and everything. So I'm good. I'm good here. But Dan, it was Dan, right, Jake? I can't hear you, Jake. I hear you talking out there, but not in my ear. Okay, anyways, Dan, I want to say thank you so much. Really appreciate it. We got a number of donations today. That's really kind of you. It helps keep us on the air. Without your donations, we wouldn't be on the air. So, Dan, thank you so much. And we had that donation earlier and a few in the pre-show. We had a couple in President Trump's during his event this morning. So Dan, really appreciate it. If you'd like to donate and help keep us on the air and help keep our programming going, we do this for you and we only can do it for your support. Either click on the $ in the chat room, under the chat room on YouTube, or go to rsbn.tv/donate. And as I said before, if you donate, no matter what the amount, during a broadcast, Jake and I will give you a shout out. Well, if Jake's not out there, he can't, but if Jake is out there, him and I will both give you a shout out, because we are really thankful. So thank you. Al Parks writes in, great calls today. People are obviously frustrated. Time for voters to bombard their reps. Phone calls, emails, tweets, and more. Thank you, Al. And Al, you suggest that people should reach out to their representatives if they're not happy with how they're behaving. And I think no matter what political party you're in, that's always something you should feel free to do, is make your voice known to your representative, because they do listen. Let's see. We have about 2 minutes, supposedly, until we go to the executive order signing. We will go right to that live when it happens and carry it here for you, and then come back here for a few minutes. I'm thirsty during this post show. Okay, better. We will come back here for about 10 minutes after the executive order signing and do a little wrap up of the executive order signing and the press briefing.
Steve, I'm going to butt in real quick and just do one. I'm sorry to butt in and interrupt you again, but I just wanted to throw it out there that somebody had commented, actually a couple people commented on your cup, and I wanted you to show them that we don't sell the cup, but they still wanted to see it.
Oh, okay.
Cool
so this was a specially made cup. I'm not sure. Am I allowed to say her name, Jake? Bridget Seals made these for us, for the people who work in the office. She's so nice, and she made these, and we got these as a gift from her and Joe a couple months ago. That's the cup I use. I love it. But you can't get these yet. We'll look into that. But if you want Right Side merchandise, not this, but mugs, shirts, hoodies, there's a lot of cool Right Side merchandise on www.teepublic.com. It's T-E-E Public. www.teepublic.com. If you go there, search for RSBN. If you search for RSBN, you will see the Right Side merchandise. Oh, through our website? I had no idea. So how do they do that, Jake? They go to rsbn.tv. And there's a shop button on our website, on rsbn.tv. So there's a shop button, and they can go there and get merchandise. Awesome. We should see if we can sell those. People like that cup, and they also like the jackets we wear for the rallies. The problem are, like, those aren't cheap. So, like, it's not like we can just easily make 1,000 of the jackets and then say, let's try to sell them. That would be a significant outlay of money. But we do discuss in the office what products you'd like. If you'd like a certain product for us to offer one that we're not offering, send us an email, feedback@rsbn.tv. Let us know. But check out that TeePublic stuff. So we are waiting right now to go to any minute now, we will go to the executive order signing, and then we'll come back after that. John Stanton says, Steve, great article on women in White House on Breitbart. You sent me a link, and it's called Exclusive in Trump's National Security Council, Women Run the Show. So if people want to read that, they can go to Breitbart and read that. Thank you, John, for the heads up. There was another message here. Where is it? Where is it? Layla, you sent me a story. What is it? You just sent me a link. It's all right. So if people want to see this, it's from the Rush Limbaugh in the EIB network page on Facebook, and it says breaking bombshell report vindicates Trump. ... So if you want to read this article that Layla sent in, go to Rush Limbaugh on the EIB network's Facebook page. I don't have time to read it now because I'm on the air, but thank you for sending in that recommendation, Layla. Hold on, I'm catching up. And Jake, I'm just checking in out there. So we're still waiting for to go live on. So we're all ready. All right, so we will definitely, as soon as it comes up, we're going to President Trump's executive order. Anytime now, he'll come on screen, we'll go to it. But for now, feel free to write in or call in the minutes before the executive order signing. At Lookner on Twitter, at LOOKNER, or direct message me. Direct message me there, or email me at steve.lookner@rsbn.tv. The phone number, I believe, is on the screen too, 202-470-0049. I forgot almost to mention the Right Side programming tonight. Friday night on Right Side, 8 p.m., America First with Nick Fuentes, 8 p.m. Eastern. 9 p.m., The Wayne Dupree Show. 10 p.m., The Right Mindset with Mike Cernovich. All of those are on Right Side tonight. You can watch them all. So check them out and enjoy them. I need to check my email and make sure I'm not ignoring any of your messages. And Twitter. I think somehow I might have, oh no, I didn't catch up yet, because Gwen Avere has a message. Gwen Avere writes, Steve, would you happen to know the press briefing etiquette behind always having the exact same reporters sitting in the front rows and getting the most attention? Do they pay to sit there? What's the deal with that? Hashtag RSBN rocks. We love you in the RSBN YouTube chat room, Steve. Love and shout out to my RSBN chat room family. Thank you so much, Gwen Avere, for writing in. And that's a good question. So this is somebody asked a similar question, but it was a bit different yesterday. But you're asking, why do they sit in the exact same positions and in the same front rows and get the most attention? I don't know what the exact procedure is. So, generally speaking, the people in the front rows are the people in the biggest news outlets, like Fox and Fox News and CNN and New York Times and stuff like that. But as to why the ones who get the most, because you see it's like always the same 11 or 12 reporters, they always get a question every day. And then there's some others. But where's the cutoff there? So I'm guessing like, you know, we see like 11 or 12 every day, but who's at like number 13 and 14? And why aren't they on the list of the top 12? I don't know. I don't know what the exact criterion is for who gets to sit where. Again, generally I think it's the more bigger news outlets, but I don't know exactly. I'd be interested in knowing. Do they pay to sit there? I don't believe they pay to sit there. I believe you just apply for a press briefing pass, and if you get one, you just go. But I'm guessing they're assigned seats. Now, there's another interesting question. Are the seats literally assigned, or is it just understood like, yeah, that's where Major Garrett sits, like don't go sit there, or like Major Garrett will kick you out or something? Like, is it just sort of done on like like when you used to be in school and everybody would sit in the same seat for class? And like there was no rule that you couldn't take somebody else's seat, but you just didn't. You took your same seat. Maybe it's like that there. I don't know. So it's a good question, Guinevere. That's the best I can do for you. But thanks for writing in, and hello to everybody in the chat room. Let's see here. I'm checking. Oh, and we are just, if you're waiting for the executive order signing, it was supposed to be 5 minutes ago. These things sometimes start a little late. We're going to go to it live as soon as it happens. President Trump will be signing a couple of executive orders on unfair trade and trying to do something about it. So that's coming very soon from the White House. Maybe he'll make some comments. He usually makes some comments. Well, I guess there's the other question. It's like, who else will be there? Because I've seen some executive orders. Like, wasn't there one a couple days ago? There was the executive order a couple days ago on energy, where at the start of the executive order, like Rick Perry spoke, Secretary of Energy Perry spoke, Vice President Pence spoke, Secretary of the Interior Zinke spoke. Who else? Somebody else spoke. Was it? I forget who the fourth one was. EPA head Mike Pruitt. They all spoke, and then President Trump signed it and then said something. I think President Trump said something, yes, after he signed it. So it could be a whole presentation thing, or it could be like a short, he's at the desk and signing it and stuff. I have to imagine it's going to be a bit of a presentation. Maybe they want, I could see the White House saying, why not make more of a presentation about these things? We have an audience, so let's say something about it. But who will be there besides President Trump? If somebody else is there, will people from the cabinet be there? I might not be centered here. Sorry if I was off center before. So let's see. Maybe I could imagine Secretary of Commerce Wilbur Ross being there. Who else would be there for the trade one? I don't know. Normally the Secretary of State wouldn't be there, I don't think, but he was in England earlier, Tillerson, so he wouldn't be there. I wonder who will be there. Maybe you have a suggestion about who else will be there besides President Trump. We'll see. Another message here. This is from John Stanton. John writes, Steve, National Correspondents Association picks independently of White House. They put on the annual comedian dinner that Trump is missing this year. You're saying the National Correspondents Association picks where the people sit? Is that what you're saying? Because do they pick who gets to be in the room? I'm not sure, John. I'd love to hear more information about this, so let us know. But thank you for writing in, John. Appreciate it. Sightless Seer writes in, don't you have a way to screen share with one of the team accessing sites suggested and bringing it on double screen? It could enhance your reporting ability. Do you mean... I think what you're saying, Sightless Seer, is this. Somebody writes in about a website, or I talk about a website. Could we split screen and have like the website on the air while I'm on the air? It's a good suggestion. The problem is that would require a second camera and a second camera person to be working at the same time. And like it would be much more complex for the producer to do that. So it's just a question of, right now, manpower and resources. That's the kind of thing where we'd love to be able to do it. But right now, we're just doing the best we have with what we have. And, it's not easy. It's not cheap to be on the air and to cover live events and to have the studio and stuff. So this is the best we can do right now. But that's why we're hoping to grow and get more people to work here and have the funds to do that so we can have more production elements, like you say. If you'd like to help us stay on the air or help us to grow.
Steve, if I could chime in on this one.
Yes, yes, Jake, do you want to get on the mic?
Very good points. You're absolutely
Jake,
right.
do you want? Can you get
camera and things? But just regarding production, I'd like to go ahead and just throw something out
yes,
there.
Jake, can you get on the mic? Hold on, Jake, can you get on the mic and say this?
Yes, I am. I'm
Oh,
already
you
on
are.
the mic,
I didn't
sir.
know you were on the mic, and I was like, well, don't explain it to me. And then,
everybody can hear
okay, great.
me,
All right,
so-
sorry, I didn't know. Jake, continue. Go ahead,
Yes,
Jake.
it's all right. I just wanted to let everybody know. I mean, it's a good question. You're right about having a dual camera and all of those things. I think what he's talking about is when you watch, when you're watching the mainstream media, you watch how they have, they'll bring up maybe a quoted Twitter or something like
Right.
that, or show a web page and kind of scroll like InfoWars does. We do have the capability of those things, but we are a live event company, so a lot of the time we're doing this stuff on the fly. And that's kind of the way that goes. Is we don't always have time to throw those things up. But the executive signing is about to come on in just a second. So if you want to let everybody know that we'll be back. Actually, no, I'm sorry. No, it's not quite yet.
Okay.
Anyways, I just wanted to make another quick point about
Yeah.
that. Yeah. So all these things happen literally on the fly. So we don't always have time to be able to just throw them up on the screen. We kind of report things as they go. So I'll throw it back to you, Steve.
Thank you, Jake. It's a good point. It's a good point, Jake. And also, if we had a staff of 20 people in the control room, then if somebody called in and said, how about this article, how about this Jason Chaffetz tweet, one person could just right then, if it's their only job to do this, could go and pull up the tweet and get it on the air. But that required that kind of getting that stuff, as Jake says, we're covering this live, getting that stuff done live it requires some manpower, and it's just it's a complex situation, and it's not something we can do that quickly at this point in time. But we'd love to be able to do that kind of thing in the future. So, if we know in advance we're going to talk about a tweet, we can probably get that up there. We've done that before. So, but thank you for the question, much appreciated, Sightless Seer. John Stanton writes in again. He says, yes, the National Correspondence Association, they pick who sits in the first row in agreement with all the correspondents who are members of the National Correspondence Association. I did not know this. I'd love to know more about this, John. This is about the press briefings. If you feel free to send me a link if you have some more information about this, I would be interested in knowing. I'd also be interested in knowing, John, so does the National Correspondence Association decide this, but do they kind of consult with the White House? Like, can they force it on the White House, or do they send a list to the White House of here's who we want in the front row, and the White House kind of says okay, we're cool with that? I don't know if that happens. So, but we appreciate you enlightening us, John. Thanks so much. Let me check here my email. I'm caught up there. And so, yeah, just to remind you, you might be here watching and waiting for President Trump's executive order signing. It's supposed to happen any minute now. It was supposed to be at 3:30. It's now 3:41. These things sometimes start late, especially if they're going to have other cabinet members speak there or something. Maybe there's a bunch of people they need to get into the room and everything. But we will go to it as soon as it starts. Then right afterwards, we'll come back here for about 10 minutes and do a little wrap-up. So please stick around. I'm also checking, since we've been on the air for a while, I want to just check my Twitter and make sure there's nothing breaking that I wanted to bring to you and talk about. So let me do that for a second. I'm just peeking here, not seeing anything yet. Let's see. Oh, here's something that happened. The House Intelligence Committee ranking member Adam Schiff actually has arrived at the White House to view the intel reports that Devin Nunes viewed a few days ago. There's actually a picture here. This is from Fox News. They posted a picture. That's Adam Schiff arriving at the White House. So you can go to the Fox News on Twitter and get that picture for yourself if you'd like. That's some news. Did I miss anything else here? Oh, and this is from the briefing. I didn't mention this. The president proclaimed Sunday, April 2nd, to be World Autism Awareness Day. And as I said before, the White House will be lit up in blue on Sunday to mark that. So if the White House is blue on Sunday, you know why it is. Anything else here? Any other news that I neglected to give you before? All right, we are caught up on news. If you'd like to write in at all and try to get a last-minute question, we got an email beforehand, so let me read that first. This is from Greg. Greg's subject is equipment suggestion. Greg says, I don't know what you currently use, but there's a NewTek TriCaster that has the purpose of live streaming with many features. You could do like Wayne Dupree and solicit donations for the equipment. I will pass that along to the tech people here. Greg, thank you for your suggestion. I need a drink of water. I also need to eat soon. We ran so late today because we had the executive order. I'm going to have to eat something soon. If I pass out on the air, it's because I didn't eat enough during the break. Oh, okay, so we're not going to be doing a post show. So when we just found that out, I just found that out. So we're going to go to the executive order signing very soon, and then that's it for this afternoon's coverage. So I'll say right now, in advance, goodbye, because I won't be able to say goodbye to you after the executive order signing. So just so you know that. Let's see here. This is I got a tweet from Layla who says, what did you say here, Layla? Layla sent me a tweet from Adam Housley that says, our sources, the surveillance that led to the unmasking of private names of American citizens started before Trump was the GOP nominee. Okay, you sent me this from Young Conservatives, youngcons.com. So if you want to see what Layla was talking about, you can go to youngcons.com. Oh, we're going. Enjoy the executive order signing. We'll see you later. Have a great...
During the campaign, I traveled the nation and visited the cities and towns devastated by unfair trade policies. Probably one of the major reasons I'm here today, trade. Nobody's ever made bad trade deals like our country has made. I saw the shuttered factories and spent time with the laid-off factory workers. I heard their stories, and I promised them action, and I promised them a solution. And all over America, you're already seeing that solutions start to take place. Take a look at what's going on in Michigan with Ford and General Motors and Fiat Chrysler and so many more. The jobs and wealth have been stripped from our country. Year after year, decade after decade, trade deficit upon trade deficit, reaching more than $700 billion last year alone, and lots of jobs. Thousands of factories have been stolen from our country. But these voiceless Americans now have a voice in the White House. Under my administration, the theft of American prosperity will end. We're going to defend our industry and create a level playing field for the American worker, finally. Today, I am signing 2 executive orders that send this message loud and clear. And that set the stage for a great revival of American manufacturing. And you saw that today. You saw what happened. You saw the kind of numbers we have. The survey actually showed 93% of manufacturers are now optimistic about the future, a record high. And that's up from about 56% just a couple of months ago. We're going to build on that tremendous momentum, and we're bringing manufacturing and jobs back to our country. First, I'm signing an executive order to ensure that we fully collect all duties imposed on foreign importers that cheat. They're cheaters. From now on, those who break the rules will face the consequences, and there'll be very severe consequences. Second, I am ordering the first ever comprehensive review of America's trade deficits and all violations of trade rules that harm the United States and the workers of the United States, just as I promised during my campaign. This review will be led by Secretary Wilbur Ross, who is joining us here today. Wilbur is an outstanding success story, an unbelievable businessman, a great but very, very fair negotiator. And on Wall Street, he's simply known as Wilbur, and everybody knows him. And now we have him on our side. So I thank you, Wilbur. It's really, you're going to do a fantastic job. We're going to investigate all trade abuses, and based on those findings, we will take necessary and lawful action to end those many abuses. I'm not beholden to any political or financial interest. I don't care. I'm here to do a job. I'm doing a job for the American worker. I really don't care. I'm not thinking about my business or anybody's business. Wilbur isn't. Peter isn't. None of the folks that we have up here are. We're doing a job. It's an opportunity like nobody's ever given. and we're here to do a great job for the American worker and for our companies where the American workers are employed. I work for the American people. Whether you're a Democrat, a Republican, or belong to no party at all, you are an American, and I'm here to represent you and your family. We're going to get this thing straightened out. We're going to get these bad trade deals straightened out. Right, Peter? It's time. You've been looking at it for years. Right, Wilbur? This combination over here can't be beaten. That's why I defied the special interests and followed through on my pledge to withdraw immediately from the Trans-Pacific Partnership. And that's why I am taking these very historic steps today. The well-being of America and the American worker is my North Star. And these two orders will point out our nation and point to everybody, point to the world. Next week, as you know, in Florida at the Southern White House, we're having the President of China and a large group from China, his representatives. And we're going to get down to some very serious business, so we look forward to it. I've spoken to him numerous times on the phone. We look very much forward to it. But it's been very bad what's been happening to our country in terms of our companies and in terms of our jobs. So we're going to start turning it around. We're going to turn it around fast. It's not going to take a long time. It's going to go fast. So I just want to end by saying that we have a team that's second to none. And when everybody is assembled and fully in gear after these two orders, I think it's going to be something very special. I'd like to ask Wilbur to say a few words. And then, Peter, you'd say a few words, and we're all set. Our Vice President, I think I'm speaking for both, but I'm not 100% sure. Yes, you are. I will tell you one thing. He has one hell of a good marriage going. Come on, Wilbur.
Thank you, Mr. President. If anyone had any doubt about the President's resolve to fix the trade problems, these two executive orders should end that speculation now and for all time. This marks the beginning of a totally new chapter in the American trade relationship with our partners overseas. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Peter.
I remember well during the campaign, the day the President made the speech outside of Pittsburgh and laid down a set of promises to the American people on trade. And today, this is the beginning of the fulfillment of those promises in a grand way, with Wilbur Ross at the helm and the President being the grand strategist of this. And we're going to get it done for the American people, workers, domestic manufacturers. Thank you.
Mr. Vice President, would you like to say something?
This is a great day for the American worker and a great day for the American economy. Once again, President Trump is keeping his word. As we look for ways to expand exports from this country, imports to this country, this president is determined that we're going to have free trade, but it's going to be fair trade and arm's length negotiations with nations, holding them accountable to the promises that they make. And the review the president is initiating today and the work of members of this team on the president's behalf will ensure that we put America first when it comes to trade. We put American jobs and American workers first.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, everybody. You're going to see some very, very strong results very, very quickly. Thank you very much. Thank you.
We're good. Thanks, everybody.
Great. Thank you, Mr. President.